Video ready. Machine ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. You don't remember for Saturday, the gun. It's when I was done. I know, it's okay, I just remember.
Good evening. Please be seated. Honorable delegates, advisors, staff, and distinguished guests, it is with great pride and privilege that I welcome you to the 13th Annual Global Classrooms International Model United Nations Conference. My name is Chuck Roberts, and I will be serving as your Conference Secretary General this weekend. However, I am humbled to introduce another man who truly holds that title, the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon. In December 1948, a radio station in Washington, D.C. requested Christmas wishes from various ambassadors stationed in the nation's capital, which were to be recorded for a broadcast the following week. The French ambassador requested peace throughout the world. Freedom for all people enslaved by imperialism, demanded his Russian counterpart. Then, over the phone, came the voice of Sir Oliver Franks, the British ambassador. "Well, it's very kind of you to ask," he said. "I'd quite like a box of crystallized fruit." This gaffe may be minuscule in the grander scheme of things. The embassy, in fact, played it off as an intentional joke. But it's funny to think, as you all sit in the seats of ambassadors anxious to enter negotiations, what do you think would happen if Sir Oliver had done something similar today? No doubt we could all read about it online, watch it on YouTube, tweet our thoughts about it, share it on Facebook, maybe even create a clever Tumblr page and generate a new meme. Today, though, for both diplomats and informed citizens, it is more important than ever to seek to understand rather than to be understood. This may seem somewhat counterintuitive, both for a profession that requires advocacy of your nation's position and for a society that tells us from an ever earlier age how important it is for us to share our thoughts and feelings about everything and in every possible medium. But it is more important than ever. As the United States navigates one of the most important bilateral relationships in the history of the world with the People's Republic of China, as the international community continues to try to understand the ramifications of the Arab Spring, and as the European Union continues to struggle towards economic recovery and political cohesion, this is a time when understanding and reconciling different viewpoints will be vastly more important than knowing how to be as clever as possible in 140 characters or less. And, lucky for you, you are in just the right position to learn these skills. I'm often asked, as a conservative and a Republican, why I have dedicated so much of my time to Model United Nations. It has been 9 years since my first Model UN conference here with Global Classrooms. But if there's one thing I've learned time and time again, it is that both international and domestic political processes today are in dire need of greater understanding and openness. We need more viewpoints, not fewer. And we need leaders and diplomats who can process and navigate those viewpoints in all their complexity, rather than turn them into bumper stickers or social media strategies. That is what, on the international stage, the United Nations is intended to do, to bring together representatives from every country to understand the problems facing the world and to take collective action to solve them. Again, it seems counterintuitive today when we were all told to make our voices heard and to speak up for what we believe in. But the most effective delegates are not necessarily those that speak the most, nor are they the ones who are best at arguing for others to believe them and their positions. Instead, they are the diplomats who seek to understand rather than to be understood. Those who would prefer to have a draft resolution that is cohesive and fully represents its supporters' positions than the draft resolution that has the most clauses or sponsors or signatories. They are also the citizens who listen to debate, not just to hear when they can next raise their placard to speak, but rather listen to understand where their colleagues are coming from and how that relates to the broader task at hand. They take time to pause and to reflect before interjecting or before tweeting. These are things I have wanted to see more of in the classroom, at Model United Nations conferences, in Congress, and here at the United Nations. A world with faster communications doesn't necessitate one with a cheapened discourse, and we shouldn't let it. You are all well on your way to preventing that world from becoming reality, having prepared and arrived for this conference. But it bears repeating. While I ask you to like Global Classrooms on Facebook or to follow us on Twitter, I also demand that you take the skills you have learned for this conference and those you will have further developed by its end on Saturday to make your communities more understanding, your leaders more accountable, and your friends and family more supported. It was another British diplomat, after all, Sir Winston Churchill, who said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." I look forward to seeing you all in action this weekend, and I wish you the best of luck. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Tim Wirth, President of the UN Foundation.
Thank you very much, Chuck, and congratulations to you. Chuck just graduated yesterday from Columbia University on his way. And Mr. Secretary General, you can get a sense of the extraordinary enthusiasm of all of the future ambassadors who are here, of whom there are 2,400, 300 teachers from 23 countries, 21 U.S. states and territories, 120 staff volunteers from 52 colleges and universities. Very, very impressive turnout, Mr. Secretary General. The future of the UN is right here. It's a wonderful thing. We at the United Nations Foundation are very pleased to be able to support the United Nations Association and Global Classroom to be part of the wonderful opportunities which you have this weekend and which you have coming up in the coming years ahead. When you think about the United Nations, the one way to try to understand the institution is to focus on its two central missions. One of those is peacekeeping, and I'm going to come back and talk about that a little bit more. Trying to keep the peace, the original mission of the UN, built out of the experiences of World War II and the hopes of nations that that would not happen again. And the second set of missions of the United Nations relates to development. How do we make sure that all 7 billion people in the world have an opportunity for education, for health care, for economic opportunity, and all of the package that make life the wonderful, challenging opportunity that it is? So 2 missions. And what we'd like to do today, very briefly, is to focus on the first one, the peacekeeping mission. The United Nations, as those of you who've been working on this issue know, oversees the second largest deployed military force in the world, with over 120,000 military, police, and civilian personnel from 118 countries, currently serving in 15 missions on 4 continents. UN peacekeepers support the implementation of peace agreements, train national police forces, promote political reconciliation, and free and fair elections. These peacekeepers come from walks of life all over the world, in some of the very toughest places that we can possibly imagine. And what we've done now is to put together a very short video, which I'd like you to take a quick look at, related to peacekeepers and how much we owe them, what a wonderful job that they are doing. So if we could have that video right now. Now it's your turn to get involved in this. We all have an obligation to thank the Peacekeepers. And what we would like you to do, in front of you is a helmet. And we'd like all of you to reach up, wave the helmet, and we want to get a picture and be able to send it to all the Peacekeepers around the world. So please reach up, hold your blue helmet up in the air. That's right, right up in the air. So we see lots of blue, lots of Peacekeepers. Everybody hold it up. Great. That is terrific. Thank you very much. Now, as you're going out tonight, if you fill your name in here, we'll make sure that we get back to you. We'll make sure that you all are all, as a result of being here, members of the UNA, United Nations Association. We're delighted to have you as part of that, and you all have free student memberships to UNA. We'll make sure that the Peacekeepers also get a copy of this photograph. It's now my great opportunity and pleasure to introduce the Secretary General. Ban Ki-moon was the first ever Secretary General to hold a Facebook town hall. For the last 10 days, he's been tweeting the future that we want all over the world with lots and lots of student input. He's led the effort to support the Arab Spring. He has made climate change and energy access a priority all across the United Nations, and he's demonstrated the importance of women and girls through his Every Woman, Every Child initiative. This is a man who grew up in the toughest of circumstances at a time when South Korea, had been destroyed by the Korean War. He grew up and saw and tells just a very, very moving story about his own experience with UN peacekeepers, his own gratitude to the UN, and he has dedicated his life to saying thank you. He's dedicated his life to all of us, to the United Nations, and it is a great pleasure to introduce Ban Ki-moon.
Thank you, Senator Tim Wirth, for your kind introduction and for your strong support as President of United Nations Foundation. We've been working very closely since my day one, and I hope we will also continue to work very closely until the last day of my term as Secretary General. Our good friend from UNA USA, who brought us together, I'd like to really thank you very much. UN Youth Champion, Ms. Monique Coleman, I met you there. Thank you very much. Secretary General Chuck Roberts. He made a wonderful speech. And thank you for your graduation, and congratulations on your graduations yesterday. And Conference Chief of Staff Courtney Lee, thank you again. Conference Director General Nicholas Barkley, thank you. And distinguished teachers who are present here, thank you very much for your very kind teaching and guidance for these young leaders. Thank you very much for your hard work and commitment for education. And ladies and gentlemen, everyone here today, it's a great pleasure to meet you today. And thank you for coming to the United Nations, and thank you for your support and understanding of the United Nations. As some of you might have noticed, I'm having a little bit trouble with my left arm, left hand. I had some fracture here. I'm a person who likes to go for broke. Unfortunately, I broke my hand last weekend while playing soccer. I believe that sports has a very important role to play in peace building, in peacemaking, and rallying power. It has a rallying power to make people united. And therefore, I've been playing soccer and other kinds of sports, but this time I was not lucky. As you may have been watching me as a Secretary General, I have been working very hard, day and night, day and night. Of course, my children and my wife, they have been very much concerned about my own health. My wife particularly has been advising me, look, you better take a break. I didn't think that she meant the break for that break my hand. But make sure that even with this accident, unfortunate accident, I have been working during last 1 week without break. And that's my commitment for peace and development and human rights, who are really in need of our support of the United Nations. Senator Tim Wirth has introduced me how I was raised up immediately after the Korean War. I was 6 years old when Korean War broke out. Just total devastation. There was nothing. There were no schools, classrooms. So I had to spend so many days, hungry nights, and I had to move here and there. I was one of the displaced persons at that time in Korea, what you call now displaced persons. At that time, I have seen the United Nations blue flag. Blue flag was a beacon of hope for all Korean people. I believe that that was the first time that the United Nations was engaged in peace enforcing peacemaking and peace building, peacekeeping. From that moment, to the minds of all Koreans, United Nations was a savior and beacon of hope. Even at this moment, there are billions of people, many children, to whom United Nations is the beacon of hope. Whenever I think of them, I'm humbled. That what and how I can deliver to them. At least if I cannot deliver anything in material things, I should at least be able to deliver a sense of hope. That please don't despair. You have the United Nations, and we will come to you. This has been my message whenever I was traveling in many developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, today, let me tell you about what United Nations and how United Nations can work together with you, young leaders. Even though I'm experiencing some difficulty, but nothing could stop me from being here today. I've been looking forward to meeting with all of you. I wanted to do something different. So I took to Twitter and asked young people around the world when they wanted to hear about. The response was amazing. The title of my speech today is Youth of the World. Make some noise. I've been speaking to many young people. You have the rights, legitimate rights, to make noises to your people, to your children, to your teachers, to your senators and congresswomen and congressmen and business community leaders, mayors, governors. There are many people who may not be able to do that, but you don't need to worry about. You are very courageous. You have such a right. And whenever you are not happy with the United Nations or your government, your cities, then try to make your noise. This is what I'm going to ask you. Let us see what I'm going to ask you later. I'm speaking to you and everyone watching by webcast. To all the youth who sent us messages, and to all people, young and old, who are ready to make some noise for our planet and its future. There are two trends at work here. First, young people are taking the global stage as never before. Second, social networks are shrinking our planet. This world has become a very small world, and everybody is now living in just a matter of distance, matter of just seconds. So everybody can be connected within a matter of seconds. I call you, therefore, Generation United Nations. You are global, you understand our common bonds, and you know how to network. I'm not going to give you a big speech full of rhetoric about stopping poverty and saving our planet. You already understand what United Nations has been doing and will continue to do. You have learned and you have watched the United Nations. I don't need to inspire you. You have already inspired me. I hope you saw my message on Twitter for this meeting in about 20 languages. I ask youth around the world to tell me what kind of future you want, what kind of future you want to shape. Here is what I heard from at least 2,000 young students. Let me just quote several messages. Aaron from Canada wants, I quote, a world with equality, social justice, and liberty for all. That's what United Nations is doing, basically. Caroline from Uganda wants a United Nations with authentic youth participation and engagement. Again, youth has become one of my priorities of the United Nations. And I'm soon going to appoint a special advisor for the first time of the Secretary General who will work as a youth issues. Sebastian from Ecuador, who is visually impaired, asks for a world with, I quote, the same opportunities for all people's needs, special or not. As I'm experiencing this in a very brief period, for at least just maximum 6 weeks, and humbly, I'm now able to understand, appreciate, and know better and more about the challenges and about the difficulties of those people living with physical disabilities, like Sebastian from Ecuador. Tumisang from South Africa wants a future where all African children have access to quality education regardless of their parents' economic background. Jovan from Bosnia and Herzegovina wants a healthy and safe environment without discrimination towards LGBT people. You might have known that I'm one of the first global leaders who have spoken out for the right and legitimate right and dignity of those people of LGBT. And when I was visiting Malawi last year, I think 2010, I was able to discuss with President Mutharika of Malawi, who passed away a few weeks ago, unfortunately, when he put 2 young gay couples into prison for 18 months of imprisonment. I appealed to him that this is wrong. They are the human beings, and they have equal right and dignity. Finally, he set them free on the very day of my visit to Malawi, immediately after I have spoken to him. What he told me that, I do not agree with you, Mr. Secretary General, but since you are the Secretary General of the United Nations and appealing me in person, I will let them free. So they were set free on the very day, immediately. I feel very proud. I'm continuing to protect the human rights and human dignity of these people who may have a different sexual orientation. They are same people, same human beings. I will continue. Aisha from Nigeria says she should light the world with energy. As you know, I have launched a sustainable energy for all. By 2030, the United Nations vision is that we will provide electricity and access to energy to all 7 billion people. Emma from Australia wants everyone in the world to have access to food and basic human services. Rawan from Jordan wants a future where human rights are guaranteed to everywhere in this world, where we appreciate people for their values, not money. Again, human rights is a fundamental principle of United Nations Charter. Alexa from Germany wants a future where gender equality is not only theory, but also practice. Gender empowerment, gender equality, that's the #1 priority again. We have established last year UN Women. There's a consolidated United Nations agency who are working to improve the gender equality and to improve gender empowerment. That's my top priority. I support all of these ideas. I mean it when I say I will listen to the voices and concerns of young people, not just in cyberspace, but in our meeting place. We have an important opportunity to make the future we want, but time is tight. In about 4 weeks, 5 days, 14 hours, and 50 minutes, to be exact, we will open the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. The truth is that I'm disappointed with the negotiation process. They're not moving fast enough. We have less than 40 days, but we have more unresolved issues than what we have now resolved. We have more than 150 pages of all these proposals, which we have to agree and streamline to make it more practical and action-oriented, but ambitious target and package for humanity. This is why I need your noise, I need your voice. When I say make some noise, I mean raise your voices. It's the young people who will be responsible to manage all these global challenges. It's not me. I'll be here only 5 years. And all these global leaders who are now in the offices will have to retire, or sometimes some of them, including myself, will have to go. Then it is ultimately you. You are the leaders, you have to carry out these torches to make this planet Earth sustainable, environmentally sustainable and hospitable. For your generation, for succeeding generations, many, many years. Demand real action, shame those governments into doing more. We have an ambitious plan for real progress, but we need agreement on the top issues. The member states have identified 26 major challenges, starting from climate change, food crisis, water scarcity. Have you known that there are at least 1.2 billion people who do not have any access to safe drinking water? At this moment, while you take it for granted, whenever you enter any office buildings or your homes, there will be a light, electricity. But there are 1.4 billion people who are living in darkness, complete darkness. Until I was a freshman, I had to leave. I have to study by the kerosene lamp, oil lamp. With all this hard work, elbow grease, and education, and industrialization of Korea, I was able to enjoy and benefit all this electricity and modern technology and energy. But remember that there are 1.4 billion people who do not have any access to electricity. This is what we are going to eliminate. I told all the governments to start now. We cannot wait until they come to Rio de Janeiro. Success will mean light in homes where people live in darkness. It will mean food for families that are now hungry. At this moment, there are almost 1 billion people tonight who will go to bed hungry. This is continuous. United Nations provides food to at least 1 million people every day, starting from breakfast, lunch, and dinner. 100 million people, not 1 million, 100 million people. We have to feed 36 million refugees around the world. So that means 136 million people whom we have to take care. We are now seeing many more refugees and internally displaced people because of the situation in Syria, because of the situation in Guinea and Guinea-Bissau and Mali. And there are many other conflict zones where increasingly the people are fleeing their country and their homes. We have to work very hard to create progress across our planet. I respect the government negotiators, but many of those folks have devoted their lives to public service. Over a dozen actions you can take, at least 12. I'm going to tell you one by one. Number one, write to your country's leaders and tell them to go to Rio Plus 20 summit meeting. Second, get your friends to register a real commitment for sustainable development on our Rio Plus 20 summit meeting. Number three, join the UN Environment Program, UNESCO Youth Exchange. Number four, build network. Send your government the ideas you want to see in the Rio outcome or national laws. Seven, tell your government to include youth in their delegations to Rio. And I expect that many youth delegations will participate in Rio Plus 20 summit meeting. 8, get involved in the major group. There's a caucus negotiating on children and youth issues at Rio. Number 9, organize events on the conference in your schools and communities. 10, build relationship with the government officials to demand action after Rio. 11, share your stories with us. We will put them in our youth flash newsletters. Finally, spread the message through Facebook, Twitter, and all the other networks you have. Why I have been emphasizing this Rio? You may or may not have paid much attention on this Rio Plus 20. 40 years ago, in Stockholm, there was a first such attempt to talk about the planetary limitations. The people have been using all resources without knowing that this planet Earth has a limit. Then 20 years ago, in Rio, there was a first Earth Summit. How we can keep this Earth, planet Earth, the only planet Earth in environmentally sustainable. They made a very good agenda, Agenda 21. But look at what they have been doing. During the last 20 years, people have consumed all these natural resources in the name of development without knowing that all these greenhouse gas emissions have created this planet Earth on a tipping point. If we do not manage well, this Earth may just drop to nowhere. Then where do you think our succeeding generations, our children, grandchildren, great-great-great-children can live in this planet Earth? We are standing on a tipping point. That's why I'm emphasizing that this Rio Plus 20 is the once in a generation opportunities to talk about, to shape the world as we want. You take any of these actions which I have said, among 12, and you can come up with your own ideas. Just get involved. I want to end this speech where I started it, on Twitter. I'm going to post my last line there. After this meeting, go to @UN to see my final message to you. Now I'll give you a hint. You'll be part of it. When I say 1, 2, 3, I want everyone raise your both hands if you will take action for the future you want. This is the future, your future you want. Make some noise for this planet. Are you ready? Let us see. Now, if you agree with me, raise your hands, both hands, and make a noise. I'll take this photo. Okay. Great, great. Thank you very much for your commitment. Thank you.
I believe we now have a number of questions for His Excellency. The first, if you would like to begin speaking, Malta.
My name is Sergio Bravo from Itesem in Monterrey, Mexico. My question is, how is the UN been working to protect civilians from violence in Syria?
Can you repeat?
How has the UN been working to protect civilians from violence in Syria?
As you know, this situation in Syria has been continuing during the last 15 months. More than 9,000, at least maybe 10,000 people have been killed during the last 15 months. It has reached intolerable situation now. The United Nations Security Council has decided to deploy the supervision mission. As of today, 260 monitors will be deployed. They must have been deployed already because of time difference. We will try our best to complete the 300 benchmark as authorized by the Security Council. They are now being deployed in 6 different cities, starting from Damascus, Aleppo, and Hara, and Hamas, and all Idlib, where violence have taken place. Our joint special envoy, my distinguished predecessor, Kofi Annan, he has put forward 6 proposals, peace proposals. We want these 6 peace proposals should be implemented in its entirety. But unfortunately, except this deployment of these monitors, we have not yet been able to see all these points implemented. In this situation, protecting the human rights and particularly human lives of civilian population, that's #1 priority. Therefore, we've been urging that all violences must stop by any side, by government side or opposition forces. So they must stop violences. Again, very alarmingly and surprisingly, a few days ago there was a huge, serious, massive terrorist attack. I believe that there must be Al-Qaeda behind it. This has created against very serious problems. There were attacks against the monitors twice, and therefore we are trying our best efforts to protect the civilian population. The deployment of monitors have had some dampening effect. The number of violences have reduced, but not enough. Not all the violences have stopped. So we will continue. We can, as much as we can, to protect the civilian population. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Genevieve Van Order, and I'm from Lakeland Union High School in Minocqua, Wisconsin. And my question is, what is the best advice you've ever been given?
The best advice you've ever been given.
What?
The best advice you've ever been given.
To who?
That has been given to you.
I have been speaking with many people, many different types of people, and including young people also. My advice to you is that as you are young, you should have big dreams, big ideas. This is very important when you shape your career, when you shape your future. If you don't have dreams, there will be no dreams to realize. It's not the case that whatever you may or whenever you have some dreams, it may not be the case that all dreams will be realized. But if you don't have dreams, there will be no dreams to be realized. So it's important to have very big and high ideas. But you need to be very practical. Realize the situation around you. So that means while you put your head above the cloud, you have to put your 2 feet firmly grounded on the ground. Then you make your own efforts. And that's the advice which I'm giving to all young people, particularly, who may be only ambitious without considering the realities on the ground. So you have to balance between ambition and the reality. That's the best way to have success. And as a Secretary General, I'm also basing my judgment on that kind of reality. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Joshua Rogers from the Athenian Academy in Richmond, Virginia. How do women play a role in the peace and security of their countries? And do you think UN Women has helped open the possibility of a female Secretary General?
That's a good question. Women have been playing very important role in the peace building and peacemaking. The perception is that it's only men who would be engaged in peacemaking and peacekeeping. But we realize that after long years of our study and experience, it's women who are at the center of this peacemaking, peace building. Yet, therefore, women's role is essential. Yet women's role have not been much recognized and appreciated. only 9% of women are working or engaged in peacekeeping or peace-building process. I'm going to increase particularly in number of female police by 2014, at least 20%. And I have appointed at least 7 women leaders at this time who are commanding and leading this UN political mission or peacekeeping missions. Even until a few years ago, there was not a single woman, but I have increased 7. There are at least more than 10 women who are now waiting to be promoted to that position. I believe that women's role is important not only in the family, but in our community and in our peacemaking, peace-building process. That's why we are paying greater attention and focus on how to empower women's role in this process. Now, I'm the 8th Secretary General. Until now, there has been no female Secretary General. All men have been serving. I believe that it would be very much appropriate and high time for to have a female Secretary General for the first time in the United Nations. I think we see a lot of very distinguished women's leaders, future leaders, and there are many capable and distinguished women leaders at this time. So the possibility is always open. It's very important that the women also takes such role as UN Secretary General in the future. So why don't you try? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure you all join in thanking the Secretary General for spending so much time with us. Mr. Secretary General, from all of us, we greatly appreciate your time, your commitment, your leadership, and your remarkable example for everybody in the world. He's an extraordinary man, and I don't know anybody that works harder than he does to achieve the goals that he talks about. So we're all in your debt, sir. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. It is now my great pleasure to introduce the first ever United Nations Youth Champion, Monique Coleman. You may know, some of you may know Monique in one role, some in another. She is probably most recognized as Taylor McKessie from the successful High School Musical franchise. She has guest starred in Boston Public, Malcolm in the Middle, Veronica Mars, Bones, The Cleveland Show, and Disney's The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. She, remarkably enough, has hosted a number of shows on her own, and she is the founder and CEO of GimmeMemo.com, an online talk show that empowers youth through safe conversation about issues pertinent to their development. Most importantly, Monique has given an enormous amount of her young life. She just came back from a 6-month tour which she put together on her own, visiting more than 24 countries around the world, to promote the issues of young people, to make as visible as possible the importance of engaging young people more thoroughly in the work of all governments. She has been an extraordinary teacher. The last thing that she wanted to do, she was, as you probably know, a successful contestant on season 3 of ABC's hit show, Dancing with the Stars. She came in fourth, and she has told the Secretary General that if she had had him as a partner, she would have won completely. Monique Coleman.
Wow, I feel like I don't need to speak now. That was such a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much, Timothy Wirth. Thank you to UNA, USA, and also I have to give a sincere thank you to the Secretary General, who is surely off doing something that is incredible. But I've had the distinct honor and pleasure of getting to know him both publicly and intimately over the last year. And I have the deepest respect and the highest level of appreciation, because the opportunity that he afforded me has made more of my dreams come true than I will ever be able to express. And so I have to just say a very, very sincere thank you to him. And most importantly, thank you to each and every one of you that is here in this room right now and that is watching on the live webcast, because you are not the leaders of tomorrow. You are not the leaders of the future. You are so very much the present, and we all know that. And I think that the Secretary General's speech about making noise is exactly what we are here to do. So thank you all for being here. As Timothy expressed to you, I am an actress, and I am most notably known for my character Taylor. But less than 2 years ago, my life changed in an unimaginable way. On August 12th of 2010, I had the honor of delivering the closing remarks at International Youth Day. And I remember it like it was yesterday because I spent a good portion of the day sweating profusely, and I had this sort of furrowed look on my brow, because coincidentally, this particular day was also the launch of the International Year of Youth. And this was the first time that I'd heard about it. And so I was really confused, because I was getting ready to launch my own website with a talk show that was devoted to empowering young people. And I couldn't believe that I was completely in the dark about this year devoted to mobilizing and engaging young people. And then when I learned that the theme was dialogue and mutual understanding, I became really intrigued. But here's the kicker. As I'm sitting in my seat, which I think was like somewhere right over there, praying that the microphone wasn't picking up my incredibly loud heartbeat, I noticed that the logo for the Year of Youth bore a striking resemblance to my logo for the website that I was going to launch. So immediately, like any young person would, I got mad, because I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen in a month when my website launches? Everybody's going to think that I stole my logo from the United Nations, and I was really upset about it. But as I was sitting there and the program was continuing, all of a sudden, this incredible feeling came over me. And I was able to set aside my feelings about the logo. I figured I'll figure that out later. And put aside my fears about addressing this room. And I just shook my head in awe of where I was and how far I'd come to get here. I had so desperately wanted to make a difference in the world. And now I found myself sitting in the building, well, more or less the room, where some of the most important decisions are made. And that's when it dawned on me. Maybe there's something that I could do to make a small contribution to this year. So in my mind, I thought, well, you know, it's the UN. I'm sure they have everything together. So I was thinking really small, like maybe I could have a bake sale, or, I don't know, wash a car, call some of my friends in Hollywood and get them to do some sort of video to promote the year. So I sent them an email, just like we used to send the letters to the president, and I wrote a personal email that said, listen, I will do anything, but I think that what you're doing and this message is so important. I will lend my platform, I will lend my time, I will do anything that I can within my power to help move this initiative forward. Little did I know that a few very short months later, I would get an email in return asking me to become the very first ever United Nations Youth Champion. And that title was just the beginning, because I perceived this as an opportunity of a lifetime. And considering the fact that it was the first year of youth in 25 years, in a way, it was. I wanted to ensure that this was more than just like a role, and so I accepted it as a responsibility. My first thought was, okay, there's no way that I can represent the youth of the world from my apartment in LA. So I decided to initiate a 6-month global tour so that I could see firsthand what young people were going through. And all I had was this pamphlet from Youth Day as my guidebook. And Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's words were my driving force. He said, as we expand our efforts, we must do even more to reach out, to listen, and to learn from young people. So that's what I set out to do. In my mind, I just wanted to have the SG's back, I guess, to bring this theme of dialogue and mutual understanding to life, to make it something that wasn't just on paper, but that was real. And when I left the United States a little over a year ago, I had one ticket purchased and a really spotty itinerary that spanned about 2 consecutive weeks with like some intermittent days here and there. And when I came back, I had been to 24 countries, including Bangladesh, India, Kenya, Greece. I'd met with girls in the Philippines who'd been rescued from trafficking. I'd sat with boys who'd escaped a conflict in Colombia. I'd met the foreign minister of Bangladesh, the president of Colombia, the mayor of Lima, and countless other government officials. I had slept at a refugee camp. I had played with kids in the slums, and I'd volunteered with almost every interagency in the United Nations. But most importantly, I had listened. I felt like I was brave enough to move past all of my insecurities and fears and take on a cause that was bigger than me, with nothing more than a brochure as a script. So after having that experience, what I can share with you is that you don't need permission to be you. And don't wait to be told what to do, that the roadmap for global change is already inside of you. After hanging out around here, I realized that your fresh and unique perspective is exactly what the UN needs. There were so many times where I didn't feel qualified. I didn't feel smart enough. I didn't feel well-read enough. I mean, honestly, there were times where I was going to a country that I didn't exactly know where it was on the map. I didn't know what the ILO or the UNA or UNGA stood for, or any of the number of acronyms. I'm sure many of you sitting in these seats know a lot more than I did when I got on that plane that day. But for those of you who don't ever let what you don't know limit who you can become. Because all you have to do is connect to one thing, one cause, one idea, one person, one quote. And as you move forward, you may be faced with frustration or moments where you have doubt of the impact that you're making. But I assure you that your involvement in the United Nations is crucial. I don't believe that any of us are actually qualified to do this work. I think that doing the work is what qualifies us. Truly, in this ever-changing economy and world, with the incredible advancements in technology and social media, what exactly would our prerequisite be? So desire, involvement, and commitment is the perfect place to start. And if you're in a room such as this, it's likely that when you look around, you're probably not the most experienced or the smartest, and maybe you don't have the most innovative ideas. But being educated, innovative, or creative is not what matters. What matters is your commitment. So those of you sitting in this room, or out there tuning in on the webcast, you've accepted the challenge to do something greater than yourself, to stand up for really important causes, and to commit to furthering the efforts of the United Nations. But the rest is your journey. It's your moment to carve. It's your tour to plan. It's your life to live. And I pray that you remain vibrant and curious, and as the Secretary General says, raise your voice. And in closing, I'd like to share my absolute most favorite quote. It's the one that got me through the tour, got me through those days and those moments where I didn't feel good enough. I didn't know if my voice was loud enough. I didn't know if I was conveying the messages the way that they were being delivered. This is the quote that has stuck with me, and I will continue to share it forever, probably. It's a Chinese proverb that says, "If there's light in the soul, there's beauty in the person. If there's beauty in the person, there is harmony in the house. If there's harmony in the house, there is order in the nation. If there is order in the nation, there will be peace in this world." My plea to you is to connect our light and set this world aflame. Because if not now, then when? And if not us, then who? Thank you so much.
I believe we have a few questions for Monique, the first from the Bahamas.
My name is Dubay Bilhol, and I go to AMSI in Dubai. I'm a delegate in the IMF, and my question is, what are some of the unique advantages young people have that generations before us did not?
Advantages or disadvantages?
Unique advantages.
Advantages. Well, I think one of the major advantages that young people have now is the immense amount of connectivity. The fact that we have social media and these platforms that we can connect with one another. But I think we also have to be mindful of that, as was spoken earlier, that that is a tool and it's a vehicle with which to connect, but it isn't the actual work itself. And so I think that we have, the advantages that any generation that follows has, which is the experience of those that came before us. And so if we can connect our innovation and our new ideas with the wisdom and experience of those that came before us, then I really don't think that there's anything that we can't do.
My name is Meisha, and I go to Brooklyn Technical High School here in New York. I'm part of the Colombian delegation for UNICEF, and my question is, what is the most interesting place you visited on your world tour, and what did you learn there?
That's impossible. That's an impossible question to answer. I mean, I visited so many incredible places. I think it's really the people and the experiences that stand out more than anything. For me, Bangladesh will always have an incredible place in my heart and in my soul because, I always looked at myself as someone who could pretty much deal with anything. I'm not really afraid of much. I'm a really hard worker, and I thought, that there were experiences that would be new, but nothing that I really couldn't handle. And within the first 20 minutes of being in Bangladesh, I cried like a little girl who'd had her puppy run over because I saw poverty, and extreme poverty in a way that I'd never even been able to conceive of. And that was really just a very impactful experience for me because it humbled me to a level where I really just saw the humanity. There was specifically a woman that came, we just left the airport, and it was maybe 10 minutes in, and we had to stop at a railway, and there was a woman that walked up to the window, and she was missing both of her arms, and she was very severely mutilated. And I remember sitting in the car and choosing to look her in the eyes. And it was so hard because in that moment, I could have just looked away or I could have gone inside of myself, but I chose to look this woman in the eyes and just give her all the love that I had in my heart. And it was such an incredible experience because I realized this was so real. This was something that nothing or no one could have ever prepared me for. And that kind of grounded me for the rest of the trip and helped me to look for the beauty, because I spent about 2 weeks in Bangladesh. It was one of the places that I spent a longer period of time, and by the end of it I just saw so much beauty, so much opportunity, made lifelong friends, and it's a place that will always stay with me. I have to tell you one other one though, and it's Kenya, Lodwar. There was this project that I visited. It was a sanitation project, and when I got it, I didn't know what that was actually going to entail. So I was assuming oh, it's probably garbage or some icky water or something, something like that. And so I was prepared to get into the trenches and get really dirty. And I get there, and it's just this room with 5 women, sewing machines, and they're just sewing. And I'm looking around oh, the sanitation project is probably out in the back, I was ready for anything. And after a while I was oh, I guess we're here, this is it. And it's a UNICEF project, which I think is why you'll be interested in it. And I find out that the sanitation project is actually sewing sanitary napkins for girls in the community. And the woman had realized that the reason why girls weren't going to school was because once a month they didn't have anything that they could use, and they would go and they would sit outside under a tree, and it wasn't necessarily that particular issue. It was the shame and the embarrassment and the lack of self-esteem that came from that eventually after 1 or 2 months the girls stopped going to school completely. And I was so fascinated by this because I had my own personal experience a year before in Haiti, where I was visited by a little friend. I mean, we're in the UN, so I'm not going to give you too many details, but I was visited by a friend on my way to Haiti, and I had this moment where I really empathized with the women there, because I was able to just go to my bathroom and get what I needed, but I thought, what do the women in these countries do? And so I had made it my personal mission to find a way to solve this problem, and I was thinking, oh, maybe we can get some sponsors or get people to do something. That was my very developed American way of thinking. And so standing there in this project and watching a woman from the community empower the community, provide jobs, and be able to create opportunities for girls to have education, it was a light bulb moment for me that made me realize that I should do what I do best and let other people do what they do best.
My name is Jenna Arturi, and I go to Somers High School, and I'm a delegate in UNESCO. My question is, how can young people be more involved with global issues, especially at home in our own communities?
I'm sorry, how can young people be more involved with?
In global issues in our own communities.
I think the first thing that young people can do is to be authentic. I mean, that's really all that I've tried to do, is just be real, keep it real. I don't think that sort of setting out to do something other than what's really in your heart to do ever really amounts to much. Tapping into your own passions and potential, I think, is always the first step. Recognizing what it is that you love to do, whether it's music or, the environment, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be some big worldly, I'm going to stop trafficking. It can be something so simple and so small, but when you start there, the passion and the drive to be able to commit to the long haul is already in place, because it is really a commitment. The moment you take this journey of being a world changer, and it's an unbelievably long and strenuous and sometimes frustrating journey. And so if you're doing something that you're genuinely passionate about, you will never tire of doing that work. And I think realizing that you are enough, that what you do every day is enough, and that if you can just connect with other people that are like-minded, that it's really through that connectivity, because no one of us can really do everything. It's about each of us doing our own part and our own role. So figure out what your role is and just wake up and do it.
Thank you very much. We've had a very special time with a very special person, Monique. We thank you and for your leadership and for being who you are. Thank you very much. As a closing note, on behalf of all of the sponsor groups, we wish you an extraordinarily good weekend. I want to thank the UNA USA education team and the volunteer conference staff, which had, as I noted earlier, 120 university students from 52 colleges and universities across North America abroad, and to the teachers and Model UN advisors who are truly responsible for ensuring that these experiences are made possible. Please look over your blue helmet, will you? Make sure you send the note in if you can. By all means, turn this in to us. We'll get back in touch with all of you as members of the UNA. Thank you very much for coming, and let me turn it back to Chuck.
Before we dismiss for the evening, please remain in your seats. I would like to make a few announcements. As Mr. Wirth said, please don't forget to thank a Peacekeeper. You can drop off your peacekeeping cards in the boxes on the way out. Please also remember that you can follow us online this weekend by liking Global Classrooms on Facebook or tweeting with the hashtag GCIMUN and finding out what all our committees are doing at munchronicle.org. Also, please remember that committee starts promptly at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow in the Grand Hyatt. There will also be a mandatory meeting for advisors at 9 a.m. in Gallery 1. Make sure you get some rest and eat a good breakfast. With that, it is my honor and my privilege to declare this Global Classrooms International Model United Nations Conference open.
You gonna check tonight? Who's with you? Who? You. Sanjay?
Oh, you first. It's you. Sorry.
No worries. Last gavel, best gavel. Connie Reed. You go, Connie.
Oh my god, I'm graduating!